The light of Christ is in you, but there's only one thing that is holding you back from experiencing that light, from shining that light, from being that light. And this one thing is what I'm going to talk about in today's video. This one thing is very simple, but it's also very complex. And I'm not going to make you wait until the end of the video to share it with you. I'm just going to share it with you now, and then we're going to elaborate on it. That one thing is thought. The thoughts of the mind get in the way of the light of Christ shining through you. Let me explain. I'm going to give you an analogy here and compare this to the sun in the sky. When there are clouds in the sky, you cannot see the sun because the clouds get in the way of the sun. Now the sun is still there. It's always there. This is likened to the Christ in you, that light in you. It's always there. But the clouds come and they get in the way. Now, the clouds are likened to your thoughts. When the clouds come or the thoughts come to the mind, you feel disconnected from your true self. You feel like you're in a state of turmoil. You feel like you're in a state of overthinking, and this is the only thing that is holding you back from experiencing and being and shining the light of Christ. Now, how do we overcome this? And this is something that you all need to know because it's simple. It's very simple, but we overcomplicate things in this world. See, I'm going to explain in just a moment, but in this world, we have given so much significance to very complex things like science, quantum physics, calculus, these sort of very complex things to understand life and nature. But the spiritual masters, they simplified things. See, you can break down all the elements into trillions of parts. But if you just zoom out and you look at everything from a 30,000 foot view, from a higher perspective, you will notice that there are only 5 main elements: earth, water, air, fire, and space, or ether. That's just an example of how we've complicated things. See, your body is made up of like 37 trillion cells or something like that. But all of those cells are just a combination of the 5 elements. So the thoughts are very simple. It's very simple to transcend the thoughts, but we have made it very complicated. We get into psychology, we get into all these different medicines and pharmaceuticals to help people who have mental turmoil. Now, some people may genuinely need help, need medication, but for someone who is healthy, for someone who is, somewhat balanced and not on medication and just, you have a certain level, you have a certain foundation to where you're okay, you're cool, you're good, you're fairly healthy. For a person like that, it's very simple to transcend the thoughts, and I'm going to tell you how now. I'm going to tell you how with a sort of saying that I've been telling people that really seems to help open people's eyes. And that is, sometimes it's not about solving the problem, but it's about letting the problem dissolve. Sometimes, let me say that again. Sometimes it's not about solving the problem, but about letting the problem dissolve. Now, how do you let the problem dissolve? How do you let all these thoughts that are just running through your mind dissolve? Well, meditation. Now let me ask you, how often do you meditate? See, the reason I have advanced programs, right? And I'm not trying to sell you anything here, I'm just using this as an example. I have advanced long-term programs. When I work with people one-on-one, they get tasks, because it's not just about information. I always say information is useless without implementation. So when they go through my programs, they have to do specific tasks, and every single day they have to do a meditation. This is the whole idea of coaching, because most people can't stay consistent by themselves. They need accountability, they need structure. So when they go through these programs, I have them do a meditation every single day because I know that this is the only way that you're going to be able to build up your system and consistently stay in a state beyond mental turmoil, confusion, and thoughts. So the reason I ask you, how often do you meditate? Because most people watching this, maybe you do meditate every single day, but most people watching this don't meditate every single day. And they deal with mental turmoil, overwhelm, worry, stress, and fear. Now, if you zoom out, right, you will notice that the worry, the stress, the fear, all of these things are rising out of thought. So when you meditate, listen carefully here. When you meditate, you are simply being, and you are basically giving your burdens to God. Remember in the Bible, Jesus says, my yoke is easy. He says, to give him your burdens. Because when you sit in meditation, when you take no thought as he taught, when you be still to know God, then the higher power will naturally take all those burdens off of your shoulders. Now, does that mean that all the situations in your family are going to be fixed, and your job and all of these things external will be fixed? No, but the external is not what's causing your problems. Hear me out. It's the internal. It's the reaction to what's happening external. If you can lower this reaction, this brain activity, if you can lower it, then you will come into the state of peace. You will come into presence, awareness. You will notice that, yes, things are happening outside, but you can only do what you can do, and you can't do any more than that. So you will notice that you're doing what you can do about the situation. And as long as you've done what you can do, then there's no reason to suffer and get in a state of overwhelm. But this happens unconsciously. It happens because we're not even thinking about it. It just naturally, it's an impulsive, compulsive behavior. So we have to take some time, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, if you can, or an hour, to sit in silence in that meditative state and allow your problems to dissolve. You don't always have to solve them. See, listen, if you try to go in your mind and work things out, nothing's gonna get worked out. You've been trying it your whole life. It's never worked. You have to allow them to simply just go, dissolve, and then you'll notice you'll start to come into a state of presence. And the thoughts you will no longer give as much significance to. Because that's the only problem, ultimately. You're giving too much significance to the thought process. But who is it that's giving the significance to the thought process? If you notice your thoughts, that means you are not the thoughts, you are observing the thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. So when the mental turmoil, overwhelm comes, you sit, you observe the thoughts, you allow them to go. And guys, this happens to me as well. Sometimes I'll get into mental turmoil, overwhelm, stress. Now I'm going to be honest, it doesn't happen that often because I do meditate every single day. I do have a meditative process. I do enter within myself, which is what Jesus taught us to do in the Bible, to enter within yourself, to take no thought. And I've been meditating every day for over 2 years, or altogether over probably 4 to 5 years. But with a specific meditation process that works for me, I've been doing it every day for about 2 years. Now, or a little bit over 2 years. Now, once you have consistently done a spiritual practice every day for a certain amount of time, that meditative state that you have when you're in the practice reflects on everything that you do in the world. So when you go out into the world, you will be more meditative naturally. The idea of meditation is not to go into some flying state, some astral projection, some lucid state and feel sensations while you're sitting there. No. A lot of times you won't feel anything during meditation. A lot of times you might be real jittery, moving around, scratching your head, itching whatever's going on within on your body, whatever. A lot of times that will be your experience. Your meditation will not be extremely calm. You'll not enter into that state of the kingdom of God or to nirvana. It won't always happen, but that's okay, because the whole idea of the meditation is to simply be. Whatever happens, allow it to happen. This is the key here. I can sum it up in one word: acceptance. Acceptance of whatever's going on in the mind. And this is what's going to set you free. This is the key. This is the true spiritual knowledge and wisdom, especially when it comes into your experience of life, of being in a state of complete acceptance. When you can take action to change a situation, you take action to change the situation. But whatever happens, whatever the outcome, the result of that action is, you are in acceptance of it, because you know you did what you could do. As long as you did what you can do, you can look at the situation and you can be okay with it. You can be in a state of acceptance. This is a state of functioning from the observer rather than the thoughts, rather than being entangled in the thought process. Is this making sense? If it is, leave a comment down below. Let me know how this resonates with you. It also gives me motivation to continue making these videos if you guys gain value, and if you share that you gain value in the comments. So the only thing holding you back from experiencing the presence of God, from being a light in the world, from shining your light, is the thoughts. Like the clouds block the sun, the thoughts block the light of God within you. But guess what? The clouds eventually pass. I've said this in my videos before, clouds are like feelings. They come and they go, they never stay forever. Have you ever seen a cloud stay in the sky forever in the same spot? No, they come and they go. The sun is shining on me right now. Tomorrow, it might be covered with the clouds. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. I know that whenever I'm in a state of overwhelmed turmoil, I remind myself that it's just the clouds, it's just the thoughts. Thoughts aren't true. Now, sometimes we get so deeply entangled in these thought processes because we've been programmed and conditioned with fear, with all sorts of things from our external world, from our upbringing, from our parents, from our religious teachers, from our siblings, from whatever people we look up to, all sorts of things. We've been programmed and conditioned deeply. So sometimes it's not as simple as just, sitting and meditating. I mean, it is that simple ultimately, but sometimes it doesn't seem that simple because the thoughts are just overwhelming you. I know you guys can relate to this. I know I can relate to this. So it's very important that you take that time to meditate, regardless of what's going on in the mind. This is why we'll get into this in other videos, but it's the order of God. It's written in Corinthians. It's the order of God. It's God, Christ, man, woman. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, God, being the source, is the head, is the ultimate. And then below that is Christ, which is the embodiment, representation, archetype of divine light, righteousness, love. And that is the head of every man. What is the man? The man is the mind. And the mind is the head of every woman. What is the woman? The woman is the emotions. So this doesn't necessarily mean gender, as this world has taken it, because they take everything literally. This is symbolic, for the mind must always rule over the emotions, and Christ must always rule over the mind. Otherwise, it gets out of order and your life gets in turmoil. So this is what has happened to most people. The emotions rule over the mind instead of the mind ruling over the emotions. The emotions say, oh, but I don't feel like meditating right now. Well, what's the point anyways? My thoughts are just going to run. I'm just going to be in turmoil anyways. Why sit and meditate? This happens to me sometimes. I'm like, I don't want to meditate. I don't need to meditate, but I know I do. And my mind has to take over in that situation and say, no, just sit, set your alarm, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just sit, just do it, focus on your breath, and I'll do it. The mind has to rule. But when the emotions rule, I don't think I'll do it. You'll be in another spiral of emotions for however long it lasts. So this is the process. The only thing holding you back from experiencing the light of God, the light of Christ, is your thoughts. And just like the sun is shining on me right now, the clouds will soon come in front of the sun, and it will still be there. It's always there. It never forsakes you. It's always there. But you just have to allow the clouds to pass. See, the sun, the reason why Christ is so powerful and God is so powerful is because, first of all, Christ represents the sun. That's one of the things he represents. So the sun is pure consciousness. It's never failed us as long as we've been alive. Has the sun failed you? I don't think so. It comes out every day. It gives light to the earth. The plants, they make their food out of the sun and they grow. They literally are the sun. They're a reflection of the sun, and so are we, because we then eat the plant. Everything is the sun. So the sun represents pure consciousness. It's not ruled by emotions. The sun doesn't just not feel like coming out one day and it chooses not to come out. No, the sun comes every day, shines on everybody equally. That's a representation of God, God's sun. So the sun, as it's shining on me right now, is always there. It's going around its path. It never switches its path. It does the same thing. Never switches its path. It's reliable. It's very reliable. So that's what Christ represents in your life. That Christ is always there within you. You just have to recognize it, realize it. In the Eastern cultures, it's called self-realization. And they even say in the Eastern cultures, in India and Tibet and Asia, they say the thoughts are the only thing that's getting in your way of experiencing God. They knew this very well. I've done a lot of research on the Eastern cultures. I learned from a guru for over 2-3 years, maybe longer. I went through his programs, everything. And it's a classical, ancient Indian guru. I mean, the man himself isn't ancient. I mean, he may be, but the teachings are ancient. Classical, meaning it comes from the very start of yoga. And they've been, the practices have been kept properly throughout the centuries, thousands of years. I've read the Yoga Sutras. Yoga simply means union. If you're from a Christian background, you may experience some fear come up in you because you think it's demonic. No, yoga simply means union. And the reason I'm telling you this is because union happens when there are no thoughts. Yoga happens, union with God, Christ becomes one with God. It's all the same thing. We just have to get out of our minds, out of these concepts, fear, doctrine, worry, and connect with the Christ, the light within us. And all throughout the world, they knew that the only thing that's getting in the way of us shining the light, experiencing the light, being the light of Christ, that which he represented, is thoughts. And it's kind of, actually it's not ironic, but for some of you it might be that he spent most of his time in the Sermon on the Mount talking about taking no thought. More than any other teaching that he taught on the Sermon on the Mount, he spent the most time saying, take no thought. For can taking thought add 1 cubit to your stature? Has thinking allowed your body to grow? Has thinking ever caused your lungs to expand and contract? Now I can consciously take a deep breath, which is very beautiful. But I don't need to think for my breath, for my lungs to happen. I don't need to think for my heart to beat, for my cells to function. This is what Jesus was saying. He speaks in parables. Thinking is useful in the world as a tool. But when thinking, the mind uses you, it becomes a problem. It blocks out the light and it does its own thing. Now, I'll end with this. The clouds, they come in front of the sun, they block the light. But what do? They actually drop rain. And then what happens? Life blossoms below. So when you're experiencing these problems, this mental turmoil, this overwhelm, you can actually look at it as water or fertilizer. It's fertilizing you, your body, your system. It's giving you wisdom. It's building you up into who you need to be, into who God created you to be. So without the thoughts, if everything was just absolutely perfect, there would be no point in life at all. So that's why we have the thoughts. That's why we have the snake, the serpent, who deceived Eve and Adam. The serpent is the desires of the lower mind. What do they come in the form of? Thoughts. But it's required, because if it wasn't there, then we'd be in ignorance like robots. We wouldn't know. We'd be one with God, but we wouldn't know good and evil. So how does good and evil represent itself? The thoughts. That's the only way we know good and evil. I think I'll talk more about this in another video. That's all for this one. Yeah, I think that's all for this one. If you gain value, leave a comment, hit the like button, and yeah, let me know how this video resonated with you. And subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Much peace and love.